Today, we welcome back Lynette Zhang from ITM Trading.
Banking crisis that started last March. It ain't over. It's still not over. My personal, very strong opinion is that we have entered the beginning phases of the hyperinflation.
We're telling the story before it even unfolds because we know how it's going to play out. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Black Swan Capitalist YouTube channel. Mindell and I want to, first of all, wish you all a happy new year filled with love, joy, health, and prosperity. Today, we welcome back our guest and partner, Lynette Zhang, from Chief Market Analyst at ITM Trading. As always, Lynette, we're humbled to have you back, so thank you for being here.
Well, we're all in the same community, aren't we? And Happy New Year to you. Thank you for having me.
So first of all, Lynette, a lot has happened in 2023, but personally, I think there's going to be a lot more surprises in 2024. We just have so much going on in the global economy, the monetary system, lots of changes actually in development now, and inflation, currency debasement, CBDCs. So I really wanted to get your outlook on 2024, and then we could go into some of the details.
Well, first of all, I want to say that everything is all set up for this transition. And geopolitically, what I see happening, because wars always accompany these kinds of transitions, it's kind of as a distraction methodology. Unfortunately, we're going to see even more war. There's some tensions that are brewing in the Middle East, even more than what's happening in Israel and the Gaza Strip, but now with Iran and the US and China and Taiwan and the US, again, we've got our fingers kind of all over the place. And so I think we're going to see a lot more geopolitical risk. And I think that a lot of people have become, almost immune to these shocks. I think the banking crisis that started last March, it ain't over. It's still not over. And I think that that's going to rear its ugly head again this year. And in the US, the FDIC, their DIF fund to take care of failing bank deposits, lower point today than it was last March when that banking crisis became apparent to everybody. I don't think that puts us in a very good position. I think we're going to see a tremendous amount of volatility in the markets, whipsawed from Fed pivot or central bank pivot to central bank raising, because I don't think this inflation is over yet.
I agree with you. I'm on the same page as you. Yeah.
So in many areas, I think we're in for a very, very, very volatile kind of year.
Yeah.
I can see that.
And in regards to what you said, whether they're going to pivot, raise rates, pause, or lower interest rates, the next FOMC meeting is January 30th and 31st. Do you think they're going to start lowering interest rates so that they could refinance the debt? Or what do you think is going to happen?
I'm glad you brought up the debt, because the debt walls, on whether you're looking at a corporate level, an individual level, or a governmental level, are higher interest rates really crack that. But I don't really see them backing down, maybe continuing to pause here for a minute, because I think the market's priced in far more cuts than the Fed can do outside of an obvious crisis. What's going to happen to the consumer? I mean, these higher interest rates, they were already, especially those with lower credit scores, were already paying an outrageous amount of interest. That has escalated dramatically. Student loans have come back on the books and needing to be paid. So I think we will likely see an obvious pivot this year, but I think that they'll have to pivot into an obvious crisis, not preemptive, because didn't they know that this was going to happen when they raised rapidly?
They know every time they know something is going to happen. Really, they're creating the things that are happening.
Well, we're just telling their story.
Right.
We're telling the story before it even unfolds because we know how it's going to play out. I do want to be very transparent about a few things because we're going into a new year and I want the audience also to have that transparency. And I think it's important that we mention some of the other problems that we're facing. Number one, I want to just clear the air that the USA at this point is so unrecognizable from the very foundational principles that it was set upon. The ideas of freedom right now and democracy are being overshadowed by the influence of a banking cartel. And we see the perceived indoctrination of the youth with a very distorted reality. You could see that. And then we have concerns ranging from the influence of this banking cartel with the potential instigation of World War III. And that's what we're talking about here because it's coupled with the financial market manipulations, war. So Lynette, it seems like they have no choice at this point but to take us to war so that way they can print new money. And that will help them, of course, even further consolidate the industry with fake money. But, you know, I don't see any other place to be for safety net besides precious metals like gold and silver, and even some of the blockchain protocol solutions. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, which is why I said the inflation, much as they want you to think that they're getting control of that, they really aren't. So yeah, I agree. And the wars that justify it. I mean, it used to be that there were roughly 50 years between wars, which gave time for an economy to recoup and the public to forget and all of this before they would then hyperinflate the currency to pay for the war. But frankly, I did this study, and once the central banks, once the Federal Reserve was installed, you just saw the time between wars get more and more and more and more and more narrow. And by 1989, we had been in a perpetual state of war ever since, because to your point, the government uses that to justify the money printing.
Right.
So what I've been watching with the central banks is, okay, they're raising rates and they're tightening over here, but conditions didn't really get a whole lot tighter. Because on the other hand, you have the government with all of their stimulation packages, et cetera. And even though for some, banking has gotten a lot tighter in their lending standards, that's not true for everybody. There's still a tremendous amount of cheap and easy money that's floating around. So the issues have not been resolved. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that raises opportunity. And that's something my brother will touch on here in a minute. But no, go ahead.
Yeah, so real quick. So in other words, us anticipating a war, it seems like that's really what's escalating right now overseas. And it's like the perfect cover up for them to create more liquidity and pump more money into the system, right?
Yeah.
Is that basically what's going on?
Yes, but let's also not overshadow the looming war, potential war, revolutionary war, depending, that's actually happening on shore as well in a lot of countries with growing discomfort as, you know, the haves and the have-nots become more and more and more transparent. But yes, it's used to justify. It's also used to redirect your attention from what's happening over here with the war to what they're really doing with the financial system. So it's got a lot more uses than just justifying the money printing. But the other thing is, if you look at the monetary velocity chart at the Federal Reserve, what we've seen since 97 is a huge plummet, and monetary velocity indicates the number of times that money changes hands, right? So therefore, is the economy actually stimulated or not? And it's at levels that are way, way worse than they were back in 1933. So that's also an indication of where we are in the system. But yet, what I've been saying for a long time is you have to pay attention to when that monetary velocity chart shifts in a pervasive way. And it has shifted in a pervasive way, which is why I can sit here and I can say that my personal, very strong opinion is that we have entered the beginning phases of the hyperinflation. So why not create debt?
So, yeah, no, I agree with you. So well, basically, they're going to continue to devalue the fiat currency in the US dollar in 2024 at a rapid rate, most likely.
Since 1913. And that was the beginning of this experiment. We're now at the end of this current experiment. That's the only tool that they have. We can see what's happened as the interest rates were the key tool in regulating the rate and speed of the inflation. And so, they want us to believe that inflation is a good thing. Well, it is for some, but it's not for most.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, for example, as they continue debasing the currency, the little guy who does not own any assets really gets hurt. And the people that own assets or even precious metals, digital assets, maybe stocks, they appreciate in value. In other words, it costs more for those assets because the currency is losing value.
Right. And this is exactly what we talked about, Vendel. You and I were talking about how the wealth gap is going to continue. It's going to continue to divide. Lynette,
go ahead.
What is that right there? What do you have over there? Are those banknotes?
These are banknotes. These are current US dollars, which you can still barter with. But here's a whole bunch of banknotes, even from the US, that have absolutely no value as a tool of barter, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's easy to debase a currency. We even just saw December 13th. What was it? God, please forgive me on this. This is the first of the year. It was Argentina that did an overnight valuation.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah, they did.
US dollar, and that was what, December 13th.
Yeah.
Just
also,
ago.
Lynette, sorry to interrupt you. I apologize. But I want to know what you think about the current bond market, because I've been reading articles upon articles. I've even put a few tweets out about this, that countries are continuously dumping the US dollar and they're trading it in for physical gold. And in some countries, they've already begun to restructure the debt in their own currency. And that's, I think, what we see with the Iraqi dinar. It's a very big conversation right now. Also, the Zimbabwe currency, they're going through restructuring of the debt. So while this narrative continues to play through this banking cartel and perpetuating war and poverty with the middle class, is there going to be a point where this is going to break sometime this year, possibly? What do you think on that? BRICS nations and so forth.
It would not surprise me if it did break this year. I think the opportunities are abounding, and it's got to be for those that hold their purchasing power, because as you so aptly pointed out, the whole role is to devalue the currency.
Yeah.
They've been moving toward, really a dual class system where you have a few that own everything and everybody else that rents everything. And I think as that's becoming more and more obvious, you're looking at the rise of the worker in terms of the unions, right?
Mm-hmm.
What people are seeing is that when they come together in community, they actually have a voice that gets heard. And I think that's a super duper important message to send out. It's what you guys have been trying to send out. It's what I've been trying to send out. It's been what all the other people in our space, that's the message that we have to send out, is we have to come together in community so that we have a voice. We can't just sit back and allow them to do whatever they want to us. And does that, I don't know that we're going to see the revolution, the people's revolution this year. We will in different parts of the world. In the US, somehow it feels like that's more of a 2025 event. But I think that everything that can happen inside of this, with the banking cartels, with the few gaining more and more control over the many, we vote with our purses and with our wallets and having assets that are actually really and truthfully outside of the system, you know, so that it holds its purchasing power. And when those opportunities evolve as they are, then you're going to be able to take advantage of them if you've held your purchasing power. If you haven't held your purchasing power, there's
I
not
agree.
anything that you can do.
Absolutely.
And there's
And
real quick, Vindo, there's one
Go
more
ahead.
point I do want to make, very short. But the fact that the central banks are buying gold and it seems that they're preparing for a gold revaluation. They're setting the stage for it. And we've been trying our best to put this out there. It's just people don't see this as a reality, but that's what they've done before.
They've
and
done it
history is
before.
simply, right. So please, Vindo, go ahead.
yeah, so I just wanted to let the audience know, if you're watching, if you're holding,
better be watching.
if you're holding fiat currencies, you need to make strategic moves and take action now, because your fiat currencies are going to continue to become weaker in their purchasing power and continue to lose value. So whatever it is, digital assets, different assets out there, there's a variety of asset classes, specifically gold and silver, precious metals. They've been around for over 5,000 years as money. They've held their value till today. And as we can see, we watch what they do, not what they say. And central banks, the big players that pretty much run the world and the financial system, are accumulating gold at record highs. Since
I'd like to point something out because I've had some questions on, well, how do you know they're going to do that gold revaluation?
okay,
Right? Well, it's very simple, really. When you have something that has no intrinsic value, it's used in one area and confidence is lost. You have to revalue that against something that is all intrinsic value because it is used in every single sector of the global economy. So it is not a random revaluation. This is confidence, right? You pointed out over 5,000 years, this has worked as money and held your purchasing power intact. This lasts for a very short period of time. But when they do those revaluations, to your point, they have to take something that nobody trusts that has no real intrinsic value and do that revaluation against something that everybody trusts, because those people that are in power want you to continue to trust the system. And so they bring in real trusted money. And, you know, we were talking about Zimbabwe. And what I find really interesting in Zimbabwe is about the fact that they came out, was it last year-ish or a year and a half ago, something like that,
yeah,
with a 1 ounce gold coin. Well, who can afford a 1 ounce gold coin in Zimbabwe but the upper class? Then, in trying to get that to the general public, they came out with a gold-backed digital CBDC, but you cannot convert it into the underlying physical gold. So,
very good point.
right? So, you know, and I want people to be really conscious of that, because until it is fully convertible, it ain't done. It's just another tool to get you into the system to trust those that are currently in power. Why are they in power? They have done such a horrendous job for the masses, but a fabulous job for the few.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% correct. And another thing I'd like to point out is in 1930, $100 could get people almost 5 gold ounces. Today, it's over $2,000 for just 1 gold ounce. So for anybody watching, let that sink in, how much your fiat currency has devalued since 1930.
And don't forget the premium.
Well, thank you. Because you're talking about the spot market that essentially has had, count them 4 tops. I mean, there was a breakout Zoom in there recently, But, for technical tops, when you see global central bankers, to your point, buying more gold than they ever have in history because they are preparing for what is already happening. This is not something that's coming. They know it's already here. It's a matter of time. And if they can maintain control, then it's in their time. But if they control.
And you know what Andy Schechtman said? So
Excuse me.
all central banks, including the Federal Reserve, designated their gold holdings on their balance sheets under the name of gold revaluation account.
Yes.
So that's extremely interesting because it's literally visible and to the public and in plain sight. But a gold revaluation is inevitable. 100%, I believe it's coming, Lynette.
Of course. And not just that, they could shrink the debt by doing that. If your debt is unsustainable and it's out of control, all you have to do, well, it's not all you have to do, but one of the things they will do, the central planners, is reset the gold price to a higher level. That debt all of a sudden gets a lot smaller, gives them room to issue new debt, to expand the global economy, even consolidate whatever they want. But Lynette, this ties us back to something you mentioned on our last call. You said the Bank of International Settlements had basically their money flower, which was a tool or a mechanism for them to get early adoption. So they are, like you said, prepared already for this. They know it's coming.
Of course.
Everything is ready. They just got to pull the lever when they're ready. And I think they're going to do that once they consolidate enough of the financial markets and own nothing, be happy, more of that stuff. So.
Well, I would agree. And you look at how the markets finished because of the Fed, the Fed pivot with lower rates. And I mean, the other part of why we have to reset the system is because the entire system has become one big financial trading instrument. The pricing for whatever it is, gold, oil, food, energy, freaking water, I mean, things that we need to live, has been turned into a trading instrument for traders. And so when we're looking at pricing, it has nothing to do with a real supply and demand market. This is every single asset, including critical infrastructure, including critical, water just became a financial asset a couple of years ago. And now there are places where the only way that people drink water is they have to buy bottled water because all of the water has been diverted to Wall Street with deep pockets, right?
Yeah.
And prices are going up and up and up and up and up. So, the system is so infiltrated with garbage that we need to reset the system, because where else is there to go but even more garbage?
It's not serving the people one bit at all. And what I wanted to mention was that the CPI, the inflation, the data that they give the public is, you already know this, Lynette, it's 100% manipulated. But what the crazy thing is, how they can easily convince people to believe that inflation is under control or coming down is the CPI data it excludes food and energy. And the crazy thing is, those are the most essential things that we need to survive and that we spend our money on. So if anything, that should only be inflation, but that's not even included in there. So it's so easily to convince people and manipulate the numbers and just make them believe that they have it under control.
Yeah, they're ripping us off.
Absolutely. But, what did they know when they set up the system? I mean, they really were genius, and they knew two key things. They knew that people marry the legal money of the state, and they cannot help but think that it will regain some of its purchasing power value, which, of course, it never does. This is a million Bolivar note from Venezuela that has more value as a napkin for an empanada than it does as a tool of barter. It's not.
So you're a millionaire, basically.
Exactly. And going back
on
to
paper.
They're
On
built
paper, it doesn't.
by eggs,
I know.
right?
Yeah.
So it's in my opinion, and what I've done for myself, because people will ask you, well, what should I do? That's never the question, because then I can say anything. The question is, what have you done for yourself? Right? Because
Right.
that's know if what's happening is true. And I've got to tell you, we have to be as independent and self-sufficient as we can possibly be. So yeah, your foundation is this is good money. This is real money. This is money that has across the board market value. So it's critically important. But you also need food, water, energy, security, barterability, which primarily is silver, but it's anything physical, wealth preservation, which is primarily gold,
Mhm.
community, which is arguably the most important part of it, and shelter, because these are all the things that we need to sustain a reasonable standard of living. And it really does all go back to community. Here in central Phoenix, I am in dead central Phoenix. I've built an urban farm and I produce most of my own food and I know the water, but I also put in a lot of catchments, rain catchments, things like that. And personally, if I could feed the world, I would. I can't. Doing my
With rising inflation, bank failures, and massive layoffs across multiple sectors, the future of the economy remains uncertain. It's no wonder the central banks have been getting prepared by stockpiling gold. At ITM Trading, we have spent over 27 years building a team of seasoned researchers and analysts who can help you prepare for any financial crisis. Our experts are ready to provide you with proven strategies to safeguard your wealth and assets in the event of an economic downturn or currency reset, which is frankly inevitable. Don't wait until it's too late. Schedule your free gold and silver strategy call by clicking on the link in the description below.
You're too kind, and you know what you need to do. I think you should
love
do
it.
a YouTube video of your garden because people can get an idea of how far you've gone for yourself to protect yourself, just so they can actually have an idea of it. I
actually,
wanted to.
and just to finish that thought, we have another YouTube channel called Beyond Gold and Silver. I mean, I have a fabulous community that I've managed to build around myself on all of the mantra pieces. And that's what we show you. So if gardening, because I'm not a gardener, that was never my thing, but I knew that food becomes the single biggest issue for people during these transitions. And look at what's happening globally regarding food, right?
Yes.
And also the evolving dangers around water because of all of this financialization. So I put in catchments, but that's where you can find it. And if you're brand new to gardening and growing your own food, we're going to start there. If you're an expert, come join us and help us teach everybody else, because we also have what we call inside that community, the Thrivers community. And so that's where we really come together and actually get me live every Tuesday.
I think I talked to you the first
it.
time we spoke. I told you I was big in botany and I love plants, and that's something I really want to do later on down the road is open up a vertical farm. But I don't want to get off topic. I do want to ask you about Senator Warren's anti-crypto bill. Now, I understand you're not crazy about crypto because it's digital. I understand that, but a lot of our community, they are heavily invested into crypto more than they are into precious metals when they should be. But Senator Warren's bill is now linking crypto to terrorism. And I really just spoke with Andy Schechtman about this a few days ago, and I find it to be very comical because we know for a fact that the dollar has actually been used as an instrument to impoverish an entire middle class, to finance terrorism, wars, drugs, human trafficking, and so forth. So it's ridiculous to make a statement and claim that, for instance, Bitcoin was linked to Hamas. And the truth is, I think it was financed by the very same people who are saying that. I don't want to go into too much detail, but not all cryptos are scams. It's not, there's no doubt about this. We see some of the largest institutions adopting some of these technologies. So what are your statements on all of this? I just want to know what your thoughts are, please.
Well, you referred back to the BIS money flower. And if you look in that money flower, there is a very small area for private cryptocurrencies. There's a much larger area for physical and
Yeah.
silver currencies, but that are outside of the central bank's purview. So, and if you read a lot of the documentation coming out of not just the BIS, but the IMF and the Federal Reserve, et cetera, what they're doing is private cryptocurrencies bad, government cryptocurrencies good, because they have had control of the valuation of the money for hundreds of years. And they aren't just going to go, okay, here you go. We had a great run. So while, in cryptocurrencies, the challenge that I have is the utility. That's the challenge that I have. If it's actually converted into a real asset like gold or food or anything, then I'm going to feel more comfortable with it. And it's less likely to be a scam, but truly any bills that come through from the government are really rooted in central banks and governments maintaining control of the money supply.
Absolutely.
And CBDCs are the way that they'll do it, because as they have said, not me, out of their own mouths, in that way, we can have our finger on the economic button 24/7. So you're doing what we want you to do. Boom. Let's throw those negative rates even lower until you feel enough pain to do what we want you to do, to fully control you socially, economically, in every way. So putting through bills, introducing bills, doing reports on private cryptos bad. I have more faith in a private crypto than I would in a CBDC, because I know what their full intention is.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you. I'm on the same page as you. I did want to bring up something, Lynette, and you did a video recently on why cash will be harder to access in 2024, and you were warning people to get out of the banks. Could you elaborate a little more and dive deeper into that?
Well, they've been this move toward elimination of the cash actually started back in the 50s when they issued the card, right? But right now, and I don't know this one way or the other, honestly, but I know they intend to put chips in their cash. So they don't intend to fully take cash away. They get you to volunteer it. The way that they do that is through retail environments, right?
Yeah.
More and more retail environments that you go into are saying, credit only, we don't accept cash. And they used the Cerveza issue to further that point. So yes, I mean, cash is still a way for you to maintain your principal, not your purchasing power. You want to maintain your purchasing power, you got to do this and you got to do that, because this is what's really outside of the system. The value of this, to your point, governments, central banks can control. So you want to get out of the banking system, because the DIF fund doesn't really have enough. If there really is indeed a major run on the banking system and enough banks collapse at the same time, well, what happened in March? They don't want you to call it a bailout, but they had to go around the system because they didn't have enough money to fund those 3 banks that failed in March. And it's worse today than it was then.
Yeah, we had 5 major banks go bust in 2023. And I think the last one was the 5th one was Citizens Bank.
Yes.
Yeah, incredible.
Well,
all in one
real
year.
quick. It's just a matter of time before they all start to fall. And this is, again, meticulously planned out from the inside, because if you look at how the banking system really works, they all give bad loans to each other too. These
Yes.
loans, they expect them to be defaulted on. And they do this intentionally because if these smaller regional banks and even some of the smaller, bigger institutional banks collapse, it's an opportunity for the bigger banks, the BlackRocks, the Goldman Sachs, to go ahead and consolidate these banks and enforce their new ESG regulation. That way you have to comply. That's what they're doing here. So it's a matter of time before they all collapse. And that's why Lynette says, get the money out. And she's right. And get into hard assets that will work for you as this uncertainty continues to escalate. So
Exactly what the central banks are doing, isn't it?
exactly. Yeah. We have to mimic what they're doing. And that's how we're going to preserve our wealth and in this community. And we're trying so hard to make sure people are aware of this. You guys are too. There are now a lot of YouTubers out there putting this information out, but I think people are catching on, and I do believe that they are being exposed, and it's getting to a point where more people are going to catch on to this. So, I mean, we're going to see a lot of information come out in 2024. I don't think people are prepared for all of it, but we'll see how it goes, right?
Right. But the time to get prepared is before you need to. And so there are naysayers out there that go, oh, you're just crazy, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, let's look at that. Because during the Cerveza crisis, I found the hole in my strategy, which was that I am a dead central Phoenix. And when people get shocked and they're hungry and hopeless, and riots can begin. But time to get prepared is before you need it. So what's the worst thing that happens? The worst thing that happens for me is I own a lot of gold and silver that is virtually invisible, but so liquid, the most liquid asset on the planet. The worst thing that happens is that I have good, clean food to eat, and I have a great place to vacation. I'm sorry, but with all of those, booty, hooty, Rudy, Manooty, why is that such a bad thing? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's enough data to show that that's what's coming down the road. I mean, it's not like you're just pulling it out of the air,
No, it's out in the open at this point.
Yeah, it is.
The thing is, you have to just decide to take action, or you can sit on it and let everything happen. And because you're not going to end up in the best place when all of this is finished. And I can guarantee that too. But yes, gold and silver, that's our biggest holding. I know I'm like 70% almost in precious metals, and the rest is in those money flower blockchain solutions like XRP and some of the others. So,
and I mean, blockchain is an incredible technology, and I really can see a lot of benefits from the string of ownership, though I can also see
the other side. Me too. Well, on that, real quick, I want to ask you something, Lynette, and please be as honest as you always are, because I love your honesty and your answers. But for the central bank digital currencies, the CBDCs, there are people on both sides of the aisle. There's the people on one side that believe the CBDCs are not going to happen. They believe that, okay, the elites, the cabal, they're trying to push it, but it's not going to happen. All right. And then there's the other side, like myself, that believe they already have everything planned out. And one way or another, it's going to happen. And most people, not all, but most people will have no option but to participate in a CBDC because they're not wealthy enough. They don't have maybe gold, silver, real digital assets that will have utility, that will appreciate in value. So my point is, there's one side that thinks it's gonna happen and the other side that thinks it's not gonna happen. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that. What do you think, honestly? Because me personally, I think they got it all structured. I think they play games with media and they created a psyops to make even the smart ones believe that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I can see right through the BS, And I know that this is a time now, it's now or never. that people literally have to prepare with precious metals, community, things like you were saying, and even select digital assets that are going to be around in the next 30, 40 years. And if you're not prepared, just how every reset in the world takes place, there's winners and losers. And you got to choose what side you're going to be on, because this will be the worst one in history.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that, this is how I think it's going to unfold. There will be a massive crisis. You know, plus we have the Fed now accounts. So I think that they are governments and central bankers on a global basis will attempt to cram this down our throats as the solution. Because as the IMF said, we'll tell people, if you let us have this, there will be no inflation. No, because there will be deflation as they push negative rates. So I think that this will be brought out as a solution, but it will not be the solution. It's going to give hope to the masses that have not prepared for this eventuality.
I see.
So think that we could see, and hopefully a nonviolent, but a revolution on a global basis rising up against the powers that be. And there are more of us than there are of them. And again, I go back to, we vote with our wallets. When you know, March and April of 2020 came about, I'm walking out in my gardens, and you remember that, how hard it was to get food or anything, right?
Oh, yeah.
Out of my gardens thinking, gosh, how smart I am, because it didn't really impact me at all. And in fact, I had the ability to help people that were freaking out because they couldn't get their toilet paper or food or what have you. But I have choices in my compliance because I have all of these assets. To your point, if you don't have those assets, you're not going to have any choice. You're going to have to go along with their program, but we don't need everybody to get it. We just need a very verbal minority to get it. And then to help, this brings in that community piece, right? I had so many people say to me, well, if they don't get it, that's just their problem. No, if they don't get it, that's all of our problems. So those of us that do get it, I feel, have to make a positive impact on a lot of people, one person at a time. But we have to help and support those people that today don't get it, because we need to come together in community so that on the other side of this mess, we retain choices. We get them back. We get back our rights. We get back our purchasing power, and we have a say in the new financial and monetary system. So I kind of see both, right?
Yeah. And I'm really optimistic. I hope so, you know, because I feel like people are waking up and people are starting to see what's going on, and we just need to continue waking people up and educating people. I mean, without knowledge, you have nothing. You don't know what's going on, you know? So
Exactly.
yeah.
And corporations you were putting off, stop. What are you waiting for? The clock tick, 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 ticking, and we are at the end. I'm so grateful that I understood in 2008 that the system died, because really that's when I was doing the gold and the silver because I knew it was a currency issue. And that's why, you know, these are the monetary metals. That's why these two are that critically important. But we have to keep in mind that you can't live without food. You can't live without water. And look at what's happening in those two key areas on a global basis. They are being controlled not by you. So take back control and create the security so that you have security in all those areas: food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. This is what we all need, and then expand it and do more than if you can. If you can't, you do what you can do because that's still going to put you in the best possible position. But if you can, expand that so that you can help those around you that, it's brainwashing. It's not their fault that they can't see what's happening. They've been trained for this since the day they were born. And so have you and I. The difference is that we had the ability and the gifts, and I'm so grateful to see the truth and get ready for it. But I'm going to say, if you were waiting to put in a garden, or if you were waiting to put in rain catchment, or you were waiting to put in security, or you were waiting to buy gold and silver, or you were waiting for, stop waiting, because we don't know when all choices will be lost.
Yeah. And actually, when we were talking to Robert Kiyosaki, he said, how many people are going to see this and hear this conversation? A lot. But how many people are really going to take action and put themselves in a better place? And he made a very good point, because that's so true. So yeah, as Lynette's saying, take action, you guys.
Well, real quick, there is one last thing. I promised the audience that I would get them a rabbit hole question from you. So let's just try it out, okay? This is real. What I'm going to share with you is I actually have some friends in the intelligence community, retired, of course, and some of them are actually whistleblowers on Rumble. But one of them explained to me the interconnectedness. Obviously, we know the details on this: the Federal Reserve, the Council on Foreign Relations, the IMF, and the World Bank. But what I was told is that there is an underground war going on right now between the Washington, D.C. shadow government and the elected government. This is where the Nasara Jassara ties into this. I'm sure you've heard about this stuff. So I just want to know what your thoughts are on that. And this is how Vendel and I see it. He just brought this up moments ago, is that we were told that it's a double-edged sword, and they would give people hope when they needed to manufacture it to get people to lean towards a false liberty, a false messiah, if you will.
Yeah.
So I just want to know what your thoughts are on that. That's for the audience, and we'll close from there.
Well, if you're asking me about Nasara Jassara, it's a little, since this really is a full wealth transfer mechanism, it's hard for me to imagine that anybody's going to ride on their white horse and save everybody, because they're executing this plan for over 100 years.
Yes, I agree.
I think we have to be our own saviors, to be honest with you. And, if that happens, great. Just like, okay, I have my bug out house with enough food and water and everything to maintain 40 people. If I don't need it as a bug out house, it's a great vacation. So if Nasara Jassara comes in and relieves all debts for everybody, I think this really is a collateral grab. It's that would be nice, but I'm not planning on that.
Same here.
Not my personal plan.
We're with you 100%. That's exactly how our thinking is, Lynette. Well, we really appreciate the time you've given us and this conversation. Your insights are always greatly appreciated. We love everything you had to say, and I'm sure the audience does as well too. So thank you very much, Lynette, for joining us again.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Just, please, no more procrastination. You can't afford it. You just can't afford it. I know people feel more comfortable in this stuff because they're more used to this stuff. But this is the stuff. This is the money that you have to have. This goes to zero. This never happens.
Break
Again,
the matrix.
utility. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you for having me. This has been great fun and great way to start the new year.
Well, yes, and we'll be able to continue this discussion as we go into 2024. As things unfold, we'll have a lot to talk about. So
Absolutely.
yeah, we'll speak then. But thank you, Lynette. Happy
Thanks,
New Year's
Lynette.
to you and your family, and have a blessed day. Okay.
You too.
All right.
Okay.
Take care. Bye.